Why did I come back into politics, and why did I come back as a liberal, if you like? Well, it's really quite simple. First of all, I came back into politics because I believe strongly in the political process, and because I'm very, very troubled by what Mr. Harper and the Reform Party and the Reform Conservatives represent to our country. I think they almost got in by accident. I mean, people wanted to punish the Liberals. And now they've been there for 4 years. And we have to wake up and understand that after 4 years they begin to take on a kind of a hold on power and begin to assume certain things about their rights to govern, the way they govern. And this usually takes governments a long, long time to get arrogant, but Mr. Harper seems to have gotten into that very quickly, almost wears it like a glove now. And we really have to take hold of that situation. And I think build a coalition, a broad coalition, and I'll tell you what I mean by that, of people, not of parties, but of people around the country who believe and share our values. You know, we all spent a lot of the summer watching the World Cup, and I think if you watch the World Cup, you realize that most goals are scored pretty near the center. Like hockey, they don't tend to come in from far outside. They tend to come in from the center of the ice. And as Mike has said, you know, the great thing about the Liberal Party is we've got an awful lot to be proud of as a party. What we've done, things we've put together as a party, the good governments we've been able to provide for Canadians. And that's something we need to do as we go forward. We need to say, okay, this is where we've come from. We're now in opposition. This is what we're going to do in government. Here are the steps that we're going to take. And I'm going to talk to you as directly as I can about 5 very simple issues. The first one is a simple thing called democracy. We don't have a government today that respects Canadian democracy. We've seen that in every which way. We've seen it in the way he prorogued the House of Commons. We've seen it the way in which he's fired people that he didn't agree with. We've seen it, most recently, we've seen it with the way in which he's treated the head of Statistics Canada and the independence and the integrity of Statistics Canada. We need to have a government that does certain very basic things. Governments have been taking a census in Canada for decades, indeed for hundreds of years. It's the most basic function of government, to know what's going on, what is the condition of the people, how are they living, how are they doing, who are they, who are we. I mean, this is a very basic function of government. And to do it in a neutral way, to do it in a way that's not politically partisan, it's not driven. You know, I mean, we all fill out our income tax. Do I worry that Stephen Harper's going to look over my income tax form and say, oh, Bob Ray, look, isn't that interesting what you did? No, I don't worry about that. I don't worry about that because I know that as much as I have the same feelings about the Canada Revenue Agency as everybody else, but I believe in the integrity of our public service. I believe in the privacy of what it is I divulge to the government, and I have confidence in the institutions of government. I trust. I have that trust. And trust is an absolutely fundamental value to how we deal with each other in the world. The Harper government is based on distrust. It's based on Tony Clement saying, well, there are all these questions and people are objecting to the questions and they come from countries where they're not comfortable telling the government these things. To which Mr. Clement should say, well, welcome to Canada. Welcome to Canada, to a country in which, yes, there are things you put down on paper and you give to somebody, and that person, after that point, it becomes completely anonymous. You have nothing to worry about. Instead of which, the Harper government feeds distrust. They feed mistrust. And they abuse power. So, who would have thought that at this point in the 21st century, we'd be saying the first thing the Liberal government the Liberal Party is committed to is democracy. And that's a very, very fundamental value. To restore parliamentary democracy, to give credence to parliamentary institutions, not to prorogue Parliament for no reason, not to dissolve Parliament for no reason, not to treat the public service like it's some kind of a partisan plaything. This is fundamental to what we need to do as Liberals. Second, Mike has talked about it. The economy. You know, the world came very close to an absolute catastrophe. And we were able to withstand some of that catastrophe in Canada because we had a good balance. We'd struck a good balance in this country. understanding when times are good, you pay off your debts. It gives you more strength to go into difficult times. Saying, yes, let's invest in the future, but let's do it in a wise and sensible way. These are things that we can be proud of as Liberals. In understanding that the world needs some balance between what the private sector does and how the public sector regulates, that we don't need to mistrust one another. Again, the stuff that Mike talked about, how we don't see government as the enemy. We see it and we believe in building partnerships in the economy and having a strong regulatory structure, not just for us, but for the world as well. Because as the world gets smaller, we're going to need stronger regulations. We're going to need stronger balance in the world economy. And we're committed to that. We're also committed to social justice. And there's no conflict between these things, between building a stronger economy, making sure we're getting our economy back on track, strong, able to deal with prosperity, the needs of our people. At the same time, to say, look, we have to make sure that we're not forgetting those who've fallen behind, and we're not forgetting those who need an opportunity. We need Canada to find its voice again in the world. This is obviously the area that as a foreign affairs critic I've been very involved with. We need to have a Canada that speaks strongly and clearly in the world. Whether it's for disarmament, whether it's dealing with the security problems in the world, and there's no conflict between those two things. We don't see the nuclear weapons race as a solution to anything. We see it as a pathology in the world. If Iran gets the bomb, then Egypt will want the bomb. If Egypt gets the bomb, then Saudi Arabia wants the bomb. Pakistan has the bomb. India has the bomb. How many more other countries do we think should get the capacity to blow themselves up and blow the world up? We have to deal with this challenge. We have to deal with it. But where's the Canadian voice? Where do we hear Mr. Harper on these issues? Where do we hear him talking about the leadership that Canada needs to provide in the world? He's not behaving like a man who wants to listen. He's not behaving like a man who wants to learn. He's not behaving like a person who wants to compromise. And as Joe Clark discovered, the first thing Joe Clark said when he became Prime Minister was, I'm going to govern as if I have a majority. And somebody asked me about it at that time. I was in the opposition, and I said, that's sort of like just saying, I'm going to jump out of this airplane as if I have a parachute. You do a lot better if you really do have a parachute. And in the case of Mr. Clark, as we know, he didn't have one. Stephen Harper doesn't have one either. And he has to learn that and understand it. And so far, I've watched this guy carefully for the last 4 years in government. Seems to me he's not somebody who really understands what it means to be in a minority parliament, the kind of give and take that you have to show. Every step, it's his way or the highway. There are no unwinnable ridings in this country. You're looking at a guy who started out in one election in a distinct third place, where every poll said we didn't have a prospect, and within 37 days I'd become the Premier of the province of Ontario. Change happens. There's a chemistry that can take hold. People can suddenly see. If you act like a winner, you're a winner. If you go into knocking on doors with the distinct view that you've got a chance, that you're there to serve, that you want to win, that you're there to take the case, you will build the confidence. And as you build the confidence, more confidence comes and more confidence comes. That's what will happen.